I hate the smell of cigarettes. The idea of inhaling a carcinogen 100 or more times a day is utterly illogical to me. Hell, like many of you, my own parents used to smoke inside the house when I was a child before quitting for good. Their excuse for being terrible influences and all-around horrible people is always the same. "We didn't know any better back then," said my mother in her annoyingly sweet voice. "Nobody knew it was bad for you yet," my father would chime in. My response was usually accompanied with an incredulous expression and unnaturally wide eyes. "It's goddamn smoke, guys!" I'd say in the same tone I would use if I were speaking to a toddler. "We've always known that smoke is bad for you. That's why when your house is on fire, they don't tell you to stand tall and enjoy the aroma with deep breaths." I swear, sometimes it's difficult to tell from the outside looking in who the parents are in this situation. Then again, I'm known to everyone who's acquainted with me as the responsible one. Ever since I was a child, I could be found on the outskirts of whatever group I was hanging out with at the time, warning them about the dangers of everything from climbing fences to throwing snowballs. There could have been ice in them, goddammit. Needless to say, I don't get invited out much. And when I do, it's from my one and only friend to speak of, Jeffrey. Or as I perhaps not so affectionately nicknamed him, Mooch. You see, Mooch is the kind of guy who's always a minute late and $1 short. $1 he has absolutely no shame or reservation to ask you or anybody else for. You know, just until enter day that will never come here. I'll never forget the embarrassment I felt when we were standing in line at the movies, when Mooch loudly proclaimed that he had forgotten his wallet. Oh, just how much a young 23-year-old like myself can long for the sweet, merciful release of death, as he petitioned the other moviegoers for donations. These are the situations that Mooch puts me in. All of this flashed in the back of my mind, as I sat across from his long, gray-haired, chain-smoking grandfather. The man smelled as though he hadn't bathed since the Nixon administration, and decided that the dirty, torn and stained, peace-symboled, cut-sleeve t-shirt he picked up at Woodstock's Summer of Love as a teenager would be the only shirt he would ever require for the next 49 years. The filth and the t-shirt weren't the only residual effects the 60s have had on this man. It's not that I didn't think the acid he dropped back during the sexual revolution didn't have the desired effect of taking him to a different interdimensional plane. On the contrary, I don't think he ever quite came back, because I could hardly understand a word that he said. He just smiled and nodded, revealing his awful brown teeth. What's left of them anyway. I don't know. I couldn't stare at them too long without getting queasy. He lit cigarette after cigarette as I went through the checklist that Mooch had texted me earlier. Let me give you some context. I was there because Mooch, to put it bluntly, is a screw-up. For the 8 months that I've known the guy, he's been fired from a staggering 11 jobs. His parents, fed up with giving their 28-year-old son money in exchange for, well, nothing but disappointment, have tasked him with the responsibility of caring for his grandfather a few times a week, making sure his house was clean, taking inventory of food, and confirming that he's taking his medication correctly. Now, you might be wondering why I was there instead of him. Allow me to take this opportunity to reiterate that his nickname is Mooch, and that he's a Major League Hall of Fame screw-up, and I hate my life. He was going out of town for a few days, and lest his parents cut him off from his allowance, he needed to find a responsible replacement for his position as a geriatric caregiver. Did I mention that I have a reputation for responsibility? So, there I begrudgingly sat in front of the 1960s throwback to the dirty hippie and his vicious and incessantly yappy shih tzu. The damned beast sentenced me to death from the ankles down the moment the old man let me in the front door. "Little mutt don't like nobody, man," chuckled Mooch's grandfather, in the kind of voice that only a person with a 3-pack-a-day habit since childhood can possess. "He don't try to bite me every time he sees me, too. He laughs in that irritatingly wet way as if he desperately needed to clear his throat. It's fine, I said, trying to dislodge the hem of my jeans from the little bastard's jaws. Come on now, man, shoo! The old man said, almost unintelligibly, as he bent over to pick up the hellhound, when with incredible speed, it released me and snapped back at him. The old man howled with a bronchitis-like laughter as he withdrew his hand. The Shih Tzu scurried away and parked himself in front of a closed door next to the open kitchen, in what I could only assume was an office or a storage closet, looking at us, his mind willing us dead with its cold little black eyes. I made a mental note to avoid the hell out of that dog. The old man made a noise that this time my brain couldn't decipher. Excuse me? I said, pointing to my right ear. Coffee? He repeated, while striking a matchstick and bringing it to his lips where a fresh cigarette dangled. No thank you, I said, rejecting his offer. I can't stay long. I just need to go over this checklist that Jeffrey left me while he's away. I continued while pulling out my phone. Then I'll get going. The old man took a ridiculously long haul of his cigarette and sat down at the kitchen table, smiling and nodding while exhaling. The smoke passed over his face through his oily gray hair. His eyes were barely visible as they fixed on me. It took me well under 15 minutes to get everything I needed completed. In that time frame, the old man lit and put out 5 of his cigarettes. I knew because I counted each and every match strike. The house was so thick with smoke, it made my eyes sting. The appearance of the house, in contrast to the hippie, was remarkably organized though. Everything labeled and clean. The smell of pine sol fighting a losing battle with the tobacco. I made my way to the white fridge, where a notepad stuck magnetically to the freezer door. I jot down my name, phone number, and address for the old man, and told him that if he needed anything while Mooch was away, to not hesitate to call me. He lit his 6th cigarette with his seemingly endless supply of matchsticks, and got up from his seat, which awakened Hell's most valued canine with a brand new fit of barking. He made his way to me, and with every step he took, which brought him closer, I realized for the first time just how large this old hippie actually was. His face engulfed in smoke again with every puff of his cigarette, maximizing his intimidation. I froze with my back against the fridge as the old man reached his hand out past my head to the notepad, removing it from the smooth metallic surface. He clapped me on the shoulder and smiled as he towered over me, reeking of sweat and smoke, and said, "I like you, boy." "I like you too, sir," I squeaked pitifully. Sidestepping the man, I picked up my coat from the hook beside the exit. A picture of Mooch, smiling like a jackass in his high school graduation photo, hung above it. I turned the knob on the front door and closed it behind me. I hesitantly looked back while I made my way to my mother's Mazda, to see the old man in the window watching me, whilst holding a piece of paper next to his head, grinning and pointing to it, and giving me a thumbs up. I genuinely laughed and gave him the gesture back, with a smile from ear to ear. He's a little kooky, sure, but all in all, he's a pretty cool old guy. I was already on the highway on my way back home, when I decided to call Mooch and let him know that everything went well. "What's up, man?" he answered. "Nothing, Mooch. I was just calling to say I went to your grandfather's place and did everything on your checklist." God, I fucking hate it when you call me that. I can almost feel him rolling his eyes. "When the shoe fits, Mooch." I chuckled. "Seriously, man, I appreciate it. I owe you one." "You owe me a new pair of jeans is what you owe me," I corrected him. "Your grandfather's demon dog sunk its little teeth right through my pants." He cackled out laughing. Snuggles bit you? What the hell did you do to him? He snorted. I didn't do anything but exist. The thing's psychotic, I shot back. The howls of laughter from him through the wire continued. I damn near hung up on him. Oh, and you could have warned me about all that fucking smoke. What smoke? Mooch said, still chuckling. Don't play stupid, man. You know how I feel about cigarettes. The fuck are you talking about? Mooch said, with no trace of sarcasm in his voice. Your grandfather, you idiot. You know, the old giant guy with the long hair and the fucked up teeth. I said, trying to bring back some of his laughter, pausing to give him the opportunity to explain that if I had known beforehand about the lung cancer, I would have surely gotten it from just stepping into the place, and I wouldn't have agreed to go. Dead silence. Come on, Mooch, fuck off, it's alright. No stress. My grandfather doesn't smoke, he said quietly. What fucking house did you go to? For a moment, I thought I must have screwed up on the address, but thinking back, I remembered Mooch's stupid smiling graduation picture, and relayed that information back to him. Call the fucking cops! Mooch shrieked, making my blood run cold. That's not my grandfather! Fast forward 6 hours, and I was sitting in the police station, ears ringing, as if a grenade had just been detonated next to my skull. The cops were explaining something to me that I couldn't quite understand in my sudden trance. They found Mooch's grandfather, dead, behind the closed door that Snuggles had fatefully guarded, tied to a chair, with a plastic bag fastened securely with tape around his bald head. And the hippie was nowhere in sight. I don't really remember being given the okay to leave the police station, let alone the drive back to my home. I opened my front door and headed straight for my bedroom. If I had been more alert, I may have noticed that it was unlocked. If I wasn't so dazed, I might have seen my parents tied back to back in the living room with their own respective bags fastened to their heads. If I hadn't been so stunned, I would have smelled the cigarette smoke before hearing the strike of a matchstick.